I will move for the reduction in the, hindi lang reduction pala, in the office of the president, the deletion of the intelligence fund in the office of the president. I will move for the deletion of the confidential funds for the office of the vice president. Hindi nga justifiable eh. Cannot be justified to be lodged under the office of the vice president.
I
For
would
a
not
more-
agree, Your Honor, because I think although PhilPost may have a need, I think maybe we should look for other sources and not prejudice the office of the Vice President.
The office of the vice president is not entitled or should not be given confidential funds. That is my position, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President, we'd also like to welcome our distinguished guests, specifically, most especially, Mr. President, the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines is in the House, Vice President Sara Duterte. We welcome her presence, Mr. President.
For this office, it's actually CF, confidential funds, in the amount of 500 million pesos. And then sa notes ko po, nakasulat doon na this is new in the sense that the 2022 budget for the OVP does not have an entry for confidential funds. So, and then, but in the budget hearing, committee hearing for this, for the Office of the Vice President's budget, the Vice President stated that she is deferring to the good judgment of Congress on what to do with the 500 million pesos in confidential funds given to the OVP. And I've noticed in our committee report, there's no change in the overall budget for the OVP. It's around 2.3 billion pesos. I-round off ko na lang po, no? I think it's 2.92, pero 2.3 billion pesos rounding it off. So, what's the meaning of this, Mr. Chairman, that we retained the 500 million pesos in confidential funds for the Office of the Vice President?
Yes, Your Honor, you're correct. We've retained it because there was no motion to increase or decrease the same amount, Your Honor.
That motion can still be made here during the plenary. During
Yes, Your
the
Honor, because
period of amendments.
there's a
Mr.
period of amendments. There's still the bicameral conference, Your Honor.
We're still in the period of interpellations,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so at the proper time, just as I manifested that I will move for the reduction in the, hindi lang reduction pala, in the office of the president, the deletion of the intelligence fund in the office of the president. At the proper time, I will move for the deletion of the confidential funds for the office of the vice president. Kasi po, marami tayong natutunan last week eh. For example, si PhilPost. Dito talala ko si Senator Tolentino po, ang chairman ng subcommittee. PhilPost needs, if I'm not mistaken, roughly the same amount. Not more than 500 million. So, and then, hindi po namin masolusyonan nung time na yon last week kung saan kukunin yung halaga to save PhilPost to reimburse PhilPost for the expenses on franking privileges. So yun po, marami tayong natutunan o nalaman last week na nangangailangan po ng funding, and nandito naman po pala may mga confidential funds na pwede namang i-let go. Actually, ang position ko po, pagbasahin natin yung definition ng confidential funds, hindi nga justifiable eh. Cannot be justified to be lodged under the office of the Vice President. Mr. Chairman, pwede po ba yun? Good could the desire to fund the field post's needs be a reasonable justification to move for the deletion of the 500 million confidential funds of the Office of the Vice President?
I
For
would
a
not
more-
agree, Your Honor, because I think although PhilPost may have a need, I think maybe we should look for other sources and not prejudice the Office of the Vice President. As the second highest official of the land, who deserves support, our support.
definition ng ano?
We should want her to succeed,
Definition ng
irrespective of whether we agree or that person. It's the institution we're trying to uphold, Your Honor. I think with expanded operations, then I think the office deserves our support, Your Honor.
The Office of the Vice President, Mr. President, is being given 2.3 billion pesos in budget. Kung i-minus natin i-subtract natin yung 500 million, ang balanse po nun 1.8 billion pesos pa rin po yun for one calendar year. Do we still say that we are not supportive of the Office of the Vice President even with a 1.8 billion pesos budget, Mr. President?
Well, we've never, out of respect, we've never decreased the Office of the Vice President's budget, Your Honor. It would be a first. I would rather it not happen under my watch as committee chair.
So I have noticed that compared to the 2022 budget of the Office of the Vice President, which was 700 something,
Yes, Your Honor.
i-round up natin 700.
702.
Yes. So the 2.3 is more than 3 times the budget of the previous fiscal year or calendar year. So are there no rules, Mr. President, on the limit on what the Office of the Vice President can ask for its budget?
I'm not aware of any, Your Honor. This is the amount provided by DBM after discussion with the office concerned, the Office of the Vice President. And I know this process includes a examination of the programs for the coming year and the priorities. So I think this is not an arbitrary amount in that sense, Your Honor. You're correct in saying that it is a big increase over the previous years, or this year's budget rather, and previous years. But the amount is, if you look at the trend since 2004, if I'm not mistaken, talagang halos nadadagdagan ho yung budget po ng OVP. But perhaps you're correct in pointing out the difference in degree or amount, Your Honor. So yun lang po. Tayo, it's an important office. We want to support it. So I don't think there are rules, hard and fast rules here, Your Honor. But if we follow the trend, we've been increasing the budget of the OVP over the past years, Your Honor.
Yes, yun na nga. I'm aware of that, but siguro not of this magnitude, no, Mr. President. Anyway, I just make that of record. And then I've read and reread the President's budget message actually. So it stated herein that total agency requests is around 8 trillion pesos if I am not mistaken. So ibig sabihin nun, ang daming requests ng mga national government agencies na unfunded, not granted by the DBM, and I'm sure they looked at some formula.
Million.
To control the increases of these budgets or requested budgets. Ang alam ko nga, di ba, titignan nila yung mga budget utilization rate, etc. So, well, at any rate, Mr. President, I think from the information that I have gathered, the Office of the Vice President requested during the budget call, kasi di ba may procedure po ito, merong cycle ito eh. The total amount of 709 million pesos, Mr. President. Tapos ang ending, 2.3 billion pesos. May we may we get the explanation from the chairman if he asked the DBM how this happened?
I'm not aware, Your Honor.
so-
But of course, there was a different occupant at the time the request was made, Your Honor. So baka I know that the current occupant of the office wants a very active role for the Vice President. And in fact, is opening satellite offices in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And that would entail additional costs, Your Honor, for personal services, for maintenance and other operating expenses. So, yun siguro. I surmise, I've not asked the DBM directly, but I surmise a lot of things happen between the budget call and the budget preparation, and finally the submission to Congress under the NEP, Your Honor.
So apparently the DBM adjusted to the request of the new Vice President. So for the record, that 709 budget request was made by the previous occupant of the office of the Vice President.
I would surmise so. Your Honor.
Yes, yun nga po. So that's why we looked at the programs nga ng and then have a comment on the programs and projects and activities proposed by the office of the Vice President. But can we go back to the 500
Ang layo niyo.
million pesos confidential fund being given to the office of the Vice President? Kasi ito po yung definition ng confidential expenses. This is found in the special provisions. Found in the special provisions section 78. Confidential expenses are those related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency. Pagdating po sa mandate, may we know what is the mandate of the office of the Vice President?
Well, it's the second highest officer of the land, Your Honor. They have a nationwide mandate, having been elected by 30,
Nasa index card po yung constitution ng US.
32.2 million Filipinos. So, actually, the mandate of the VP is there's no fixed mandate under the Constitution, Your Honor. It just states that the Vice President may serve as a member of the cabinet without need of confirmation. So there are instances historically where the Vice President is given a role by the President. So largely, it's the President who determines what the role of the Vice President is in actual fact, Your Honor, because under the Constitution, there's a wide leeway or no fixed rule. Unlike in the US, where the Vice President is the President of the Senate, there is a legal mandate. There is no such comparative role for the Vice President in our country, Your Honor.
Yes, I think when our law uses the word mandate, hindi po ibig sabihin yata nito yung that you were elected into office kasi ang ibig sabihin siguro nito is yung functions ng opisina, utos sa opisina under the law. And then since this is a constitutional office, the mandate would be found in the Constitution. And this is what we found in the Constitution under Article 7, no? Article 7, Section 7, on the duty of the Vice President. If the President-elect fails to qualify, the Vice President-elect shall act as President until the President-elect shall have qualified. If a President shall not have been chosen, the Vice President-elect shall act as President until a President shall have been chosen and qualified. If at the beginning of the term of the President-elect shall have died or shall have become permanently disabled, the Vice President-elect shall become President. And then meron din po sa Section 8, in case of death, permanent with disability, removal from office, or resignation of the President, the Vice President shall become the President to serve the unexpired term, etc. So that, as far as this representation is concerned, that should give us the mandate of the office of the Vice President, which is to be prepared to be President at any time, Mr. President. So, in my personal opinion, such a mandate cannot justify the giving of confidential fund for confidential expenses, Mr. President. Kasi ito na nga yung epekto. Ano? Anyway, we have mentioned the bottom line increase na times 3 tuloy dahil nga because of the PAPs planned by the Office of the Vice President. Pero am I correct in assuming, Mr. Chairman, that by the next budget cycle, kasi times 3 itong times 3 ang budget nitong Office of the Vice President for 2023. In the next budget cycle, dadaanan naman natin yung budget utilization rate, di ba? Mr. Chairman, makikita naman po natin if the agency can absorb or did absorb the amount poured into the agency. Mr.
That's
Chairman.
correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so ang problema kasi, Mr. Chairman, if the amounts are dole-outs or giveaway, madali talagang ma-achieve po yun. That is, kasi ito po nakita namin, for example, nagtaasan kasi lahat, even yung mga items in the budget of the OVP. Supplies and materials, I will just round off the numbers, from 45 million to 263 million. Professional services, from 41 million to 193 million. Tignan nyo kung tama mga figures ko. Sabihin nyo kung mali ako. And of course, confidential from 0 to 500 million. Then financial assistance / subsidy, 357 to 920 million pesos. Then representation, 29 to 79 million pesos. Traveling, 25 to 59 million pesos. And then rent, 18 to 32 million. Yung rent na-explain na because of the plan to rent the satellite offices. So, yan po yung, and then the bottom line nga, yung bottom line, times 3 po yung bottom line budget of the Office of the Vice President, which has ballooned to 2.3 billion pesos because of the PAPs, the PAPs submitted or planned by the Office of the Vice President. So, since pumasa sa DBM yan, and then, anyway, we have the mechanism in place in the budget process nga sa susunod. Mari-review naman po natin kung anong achievements, paano ginastos, andyan naman din si COA to audit. And then, but I still, so parang ano na po yan, maybe if the appeal is to give the OVP a chance, to execute their PAPs, then because of the overwhelming mandate given to the new occupant by the people, 32 million po yata ang boto po ng ating Vice President, the highest ever, even higher than the President. So we will be testing the OVP's usage of its budget for 2023 in the next budget cycle. Doon po natin makikita. But I will still maintain, Mr. Chairman, that tayo naman gumawa ng mga definition ng confidential fund. Tayo rin gumawa ng definition ng confidential expenses. Per our own definition, per Congress's own definition of confidential funds, the Office of the Vice President is not entitled or should not be given confidential funds. That is my position, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick manifestation of support. I just want to express my full support for the budget of the Office of the Vice President. Mr. President, as I have mentioned during the hearing, first time in a very long time po na muling sabay nanalo po ang magkaalyadong presidente at vice-presidente sa ating bansa. Kaya masasabi ko po na she will work closely with the President and thus needs all the support she can get to perform her duties. Malaki po ang aking tiwala kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Alam ko pong magiging malaking tulong po ang mga programa niya para sa ating mga kababayan. Would like to reiterate my full support for the budget of the Office of the Vice President. Thank you, Mr. President.
We take note of your manifestation with appreciation. Thank you.
Yes, we'd like to thank our Vice Chair, Senator Bongo, of course, who also hails from Davao, and I'm sure the Vice President and the Office of the Vice President is very appreciative of his support. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There being no other member who has manifested the intention to ask questions and interpolate, I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate and consider the budget on the office of the Vice President be deemed submitted for the body's consideration. I so move, Madam President.
The motion is carried. The budget of the office of the Vice President is submitted.
Thank you, Madam President, Majority Leader, dear colleagues. Thank you to the Minority Leader. May we ask for a 1-minute
Yes,
suspension,
that's
Your
all.
Honor?